Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Caregiver's Toolbox, tools for everyday caregiving. My name is Ryan McAniff. I am the host. I am also the owner of a private home care company in Lexington, Massachusetts, where the Revolutionary War started, called Minute Women Home Care. And so this podcast is dedicated to providing education and information about senior care topics. And today's guests are going to be really fascinating. We have Lexi and Taylor from the MIT AgeLab. Yes, that MIT AgeLab. And we're excited to be able to bring two people to you that are dedicated to researching and learning more about aging. And I think it's going to be a great podcast, and I'm excited to have both Lexi and Taylor. So Lexi, Taylor, welcome to the program. Thank you so much for Zooming in. How's everything going?
Yeah, thank you so much for having us on. Looking forward to having this conversation today.
Absolutely.
And echoing Lexi here and saying hi. Sorry.
Absolutely. And that's okay. And I will point to, I will make sure to be more clear with who to ask questions with. But we are going to be talking about the MIT AgeLab. But let's first talk about you, Lexi. Lexi, what brought you to the MIT AgeLab, and give us a little bit about your backstory and how you got involved with MIT.
Yeah, so my background is in psychology and public health. And I actually spent a lot of time working on the opposite end of the age spectrum, doing a lot of work with kiddos for a lot of my life. And then it wasn't until I did, an internship with the AgeLab that I was really opened up to this world of aging and what that means, and just how many different avenues there are to explore in the field of aging. So that's where I've been for the past 3.5 years or so. And it's been a great experience so far.
And so you said internship. Does that mean that you're an MIT grad? Like you graduated is that how it works? How does somebody get into MIT AgeLab?
Yeah, so I did not go to MIT. We have a couple people on the team that did do some of their education there. But I actually went to Tulane University, and I just applied to a summer internship at the AgeLab, where it was just this really awesome opportunity to, work with such a wide variety of researchers from different backgrounds, and really get to start getting a deeper look at what research looks like in this area.
See, I ask these questions because I'm not smart enough to get internships anywhere. I just didn't, that wasn't a world I was aware of. So I didn't know how that worked, but I think that's great. And it's great to know how you got involved. And Taylor, I'm going to ask you the very same question. So everybody knows what's a bit of your background and how did you get involved with the AgeLab?
Sure. So I'm Taylor. Great to be here. My background is actually in social work and in public health. I have sort of always been involved in the field of aging in my career, which, as I think is a little bit different from what Lexi has mentioned in her story, and I think is actually less common if you were to take a random sample of folks who work at the AgeLab. Most folks come to the lab not necessarily with a background at all in the field of aging by any means. So as far as my story is concerned, I actually got kind of launched into the field of aging from an undergraduate social work practicum that was sort of randomly assigned. I got kind of put in a council on aging setting and was doing community kind of program work in the community with a grandparents raising grandchildren program in Athens, Georgia. Go Dogs. And from there, I sort of fell in love with the field and decided to stick around, and have kind of shaped subsequently my education and a lot of my field experiences in the field from there. In particular, I think the lab is a really unique place in that every single one of us has a very different background. So my background in social work and public health is certainly one area and one lens through which to understand research and answer some of our emerging questions. But we work alongside engineers, computer scientists, and the like.
When I think about the MIT AgeLab, because I've got a very I'm a visual learner, visual person. I imagine something like Willy Wonka's like chocolate factory of like all these cool doohickeys and different things that are going on. And it's basically a giant, like, it's like a giant playpen for being able to do what you want to do. Is my assumptions on this even wildly close to what the expectation is? Are there golden tickets that you give out so that people can come visit and see what's going on? What is, I guess, essentially, Taylor, what is the MIT AgeLab for those who have never heard of it, or maybe those like me who have heard of it, know that it exists, but kind of feel like it's a little bit of like this Wizard of Oz, what's behind the curtain, what's going on in there? And it seems really cool, but I don't really know what it's all about. What is the AgeLab and what does it look like?
Yeah, so I think maybe Disney World is a better characterization. At least I think that's the one that we try to go for. That's the feeling we try to go for when we think about what an in-person experience or tour of the AgeLab could feel like. Prior to the pandemic, we used to love having people come in, and people would come in, drop in all the time. Unfortunately, sort of MIT, the Institute's changing rules around visitors in the pandemic has now restricted us a bit more than we would like, but we hope to be able to open the space back up in the coming months as well. But the MIT AgeLab is a multidisciplinary research program at MIT. We live in the Center for Transportation and Logistics at MIT. That often puzzles folks. I often get asked, why do you live in the Center for Transportation and Logistics? Our lab was founded by Dr. Joseph Coughlin about 20 years ago. And he got started in this work really thinking about the evolution of transportation services and how transportation is going to evolve with new technology, and specifically how older adults themselves will be getting around. While we still have a robust research program and domain focused on transportation, that work has certainly evolved, right, with the sort of advent of new in-vehicle technology, trying to understand human-computer interaction in the vehicle, understanding how we design vehicles and how we can design our built environment in relationship to ourselves and our vehicles. But we've also now developed several other domains of research that really aims to think about population aging and its impact on society. And we really do believe that aging affects everyone, and it affects everyone across many domains in their lives, from their finances to their homes.
Well, like the old adage, death and taxes, right? And to get to death, you've got to go through the aging, the way that we age. So, I mean, it's definitely something that most people are going to be going through. And I also think it's something that a lot of people don't really think about, right? And it's not something in our experience, we're a crisis business. People are calling us up for home care probably 6 to 12 months after they needed it. And mom's just gone to the hospital and they need care right now. Not a whole lot of planning goes into this. And Lexi, going back to you, are you finding that, obviously coming from transportation makes sense, being in the transportation side of things, because that's one of the biggest reasons. That's the first big thing that goes, right? Taking the keys away from mom or dad. I guess the question I was going to ask of you, Lexi, is that are you finding the same things with your research that people aren't planning, and that's where some of the tools that we're going to be going over are going to be helpful, or at least useful for some of the people out there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think something too is that when we think about aging at the AgeLab, we're not just talking about, age 50 plus, age 60 plus. We really think about aging as a process across the entire lifespan. So certainly thinking about how we plan for the future in terms of each of these domains, maybe finances, transportation, et cetera. But really thinking about how each of our behaviors and attitudes throughout our lifespan, starting from early on, can affect our later life as well.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, I guess when most people think about aging, you think about the old AARP, right? You're officially getting old once you're able to get the AARP card, but it's obviously aging starts from day one. You're on the path immediately once you're born. So that's a bit of an interesting kind of way to look at that, because I bet most people don't really consider themselves. I'm 37 and I'm not aging, but then you look in the mirror and see the gray and you're like, oh, I'm aging. Oh, I'm aging big time. So did we kind of go over the origin stories, or is that something that, Taylor, you wanted to go into detail a little bit more about?
No, I think we've covered the highlights for sure.
So there are a couple of things that you wanted to talk about specifically, which were kind of tools that your the MIT AgeLab has for people out there. One thing that I will mention up front right now is that you don't have to worry about writing every tool down or somehow crashing your car trying to get this information. Everything, the links and everything will be in the comments section or the summary below, whether this is a podcast or on YouTube, and you can just go back, click the links and see all of this stuff. So what are some of the tools that you want to go over, and what tool do you think is the first one that you're most wanting to talk about today, Taylor?
So a lot of our work at the AgeLab, I should mention, is social science research. And so for us, that often means really positioning people at the center of answering a lot of our research questions. It's a common misconception that we do biological research or aging as it relates to cellular research, right? If you were to step foot in the AgeLab, we're not going to ask you for a tissue sample. That's not the kind of work that we're doing. But in thinking about social science research, that often means we're leveraging some more traditional methods, so thinking about surveys and focus groups, to really unique and fun and interactive methods that we design, as a team. And so we wanted to take the opportunity to highlight some of those methods with the audience today, and talk about methods that are both perhaps really interesting and creative and may not be something you hear about every day, but also ones that everyday folks from right here in Cambridge, Massachusetts, to individuals living in Antarctica could be involved in. So I think we wanted to kind of kick things off by talking a little bit about some of our research panels that we have currently running at the AgeLab. Like I mentioned, in thinking about positioning people and what people have to say in the center of all of our research questions means talking directly with folks. And so right now we have sort of two panels, two primary panels around caregivers and around individuals aged 85 plus. So I think I would love to actually pass it off to maybe Lexi to talk a little bit about that first, that caregiver panel group first, and then I'll jump back in, so you're not just listening to me for another 10 minutes.
That sounds like a plan. And Lexi, before you get started, I get a little report of where everyone in the country and in the world listens to this podcast. And I will throw you a pizza party if we get somebody that is listening in Antarctica. So that's just if we can get somebody on Antarctica, that's going to be a big one. But Lexi, I'll bring it over to you. Tell us a bit more about the caregiver panel. And one question I have, because I did look at your website beforehand, does the caregiver panel kind of work in conjunction with developing the data that's part of your mapping the caregiver journey?
Yeah, it's a good question. So that mapping the caregiver journey project that you might see on our website was actually from before the whole caregiver panel existed, but it's something that we are hoping to actually update soon with new data. But CareHive is our caregiving research initiative at the AgeLab. So a huge piece of this is our caregiver panel, like Taylor mentioned. And this is an online panel of right now about 1,500 informal family caregivers from anywhere in the world, across the US, outside of the US. who join our panel, and then they can participate in research with us to share their experiences. So we've covered topics covering a range of different ideas. So we've talked about caregiving and technology. We've talked about words and emotions related to caregiving. We're looking into caregiver self-care right now. So this is a project that allows us to, leverage caregiver voices and understand what that caregiver journey might look like over time. What are some of the biggest challenges and obstacles that caregivers are experiencing? What are some of their biggest needs? So we're recruiting for this right now. So for anyone who's listening right now and this is resonating with them, I should also mention that we use a really broad definition of caregiving. So you might be living with your family member, you might be living across the country, you might be calling to check in if they're okay once a week, or, maybe doing that 24/7 daily care. It can really be a range, and we're really just hoping to learn from as many people as we can in different situations. So we certainly encourage folks to join if they're interested.
So, and certainly everybody's caregiving experience is different because the world and the country is so small, but yet so far away if you're in Massachusetts and mom and dad's in Florida. But one of the questions I have is so somebody joins this and they're giving you this data and they're giving you the interviews and they're kind of letting you know what's going on. What happens with all of that? What's the kind of end goal with something like a panel like the Care Hive?
Yeah, so I would say we have a couple of different goals for this research. So, certainly one of them being an academic institution. We do hope to share what we're learning through conferences, journal articles, sharing this information in hopes that it can enact actual change in the world. I would say another large root of this is through our sponsor organizations, which are primarily corporate, who tend to have that direct route into the real world, if you will, where we can share our insights with them and they can turn those into tools, policy change, information resources, anything like that. Those are some of our main goals.
That's exciting. So you're looking for people that are willing to donate their time and give that feedback. I would think that there's two avenues of thought that make me think. I would think that caregivers sometimes feel isolated and they would be excited to share their experiences with somebody, especially if they feel like they don't have any other outlet. Not that you're going to become their best friend or anything, but it allows them to make it feel like their journey is a bit more worthwhile and can help others. But then at the same time, I'm sure there are caregivers that are like, I'd love to do this, Lexi. If you can find me the time, or you can, they explain to you what they're going through, and you're like, yeah, that's a big plate. You got a lot on your plate right there to manage. What do you find? What's the average person look like? I know that there's a wide range of people, but what are you finding in relations to that? What does a caregiver look like for this type of study?
Yeah, so there really is such a wide variety, and to your point, it's definitely a balance of the folks that are volunteering their time for this are often incredibly busy and have a lot on their plate and are stressed. So we're so thankful that they are willing to donate that time. At the same time, we, try to be cognizant of that, make it low commitment. Folks can skip surveys whenever they want, participate whenever they want. And we definitely have heard from a lot of people, particularly through, interviews and focus groups, that having this opportunity to just openly share candidly what they're going through has been impactful. And additionally, if there are really big challenges that people have been going through, if that can, be flipped into a positive light and help other caregivers as well, that's something that we've heard from some folks.
And you said that there are about 1,500 people involved in this right now. Is there a certain number you want to get to, or is it if you could get 1 million people in this, you'd try to do 1 million?
Yes, I would say if you asked our director, Dr. Joe Coughlin, 1 million seems pretty good. We could try for 1 billion, maybe.
All right. So there's an infinite amount of people that you would be happy to talk to and survey and get information about the care hive and the caregiver panel.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
Well, that sounds like somebody who's a tad bit ambitious, I would say. Seems, what's 1 million people? Just pull that out of your hat. Just, you know what, instead of doing this, you just need to get Kim Kardashian to do one Instagram post about the MIT AgeLab, and you will probably hit your number. So I think the demographic now is, I'm not that demographic. You'll step up slowly to Instagram famous and getting those people. But getting back on track with my ADD joking around, Taylor, we have the 85 plus panel. We also have, we just talked about the caregiver panel, and we now have also the 85 plus panel. Is that something that you would like to speak more about, or is that something that Lexi should hold the reins on as well?
Yes, so our panel, in addition to the Care Hive panel, we have a panel of participants who are all over the ages of 85 and older. We call this group our 85 plus lifestyle leaders panel. We really do believe that they are on the leading edge of longevity and the leading edge of aging, so to speak. This is a group of folks who meet bi-monthly, so about 6 times a year or every other month, with us at the lab to talk about the unprecedented challenges and opportunities of greater longevity. We're really trying to understand with this group what it means to be aging in the 21st century, what it means to be kind of in that the literature conceptualize it. I can't speak today. Sorry. Considers the 85 plus sort of in the oldest old or the sort of latest phase of life. And so we're really trying to explore what some of the key kinds of questions are that are on people's minds who are in that phase of life, as well as for us, what sorts of questions remain unanswered in the literature and where we can fill in the gaps in doing research with this group. So we've had this panel since about 2015. So we've had them for a good bit of time now and have really gotten to know many people over that time as well. The pandemic has been particularly interesting for this group in that we are now pretty much virtual all the time right now with the panel. So yes, you heard that correctly. I am convening 30 to 40, 85 plus year olds on a bi-monthly basis on Zoom. But this also means we've been able to reach participants all over the United States, and not just individuals sort of previously located in the greater Boston area and who had the mobility to actually come and see us at the lab. So we have covered all sorts of topics with this group, from thinking about caregiving, of course, and family relationships and health and well-being, but also technology adoption, transportation, housing. How are people making decisions about where they're going to live when they're, easily reaching 100 these days, right? And so while I really like to say that insights and findings from this panel are certainly not generalizable to every 85 plus year old in the United States, we do think this panel can offer us a really rich and vivid illustration of some of the experiences of a generation, frankly, that's really, again, kind of contending with life and older age in the 21st century.
Well, an interesting experience I had that goes to this, and I'm sure it's not the first time you've heard it, is I went out to Arlington to check on a client we were caring for, and we were caring for the wife, and the husband was there. And this guy was like 90 years old, and when I met him, he was on his back underneath the bathroom sink, fixing the bathroom sink underneath. And I mean, I was like, this guy's this guy's still going well. And I got talking with him. He was a friendly enough guy. And he said, I'm 90. I forget how old he was. He was 90 to 95, but he was still just like, if it looked like he could do a jumping, a backflip if he wanted to. But he's like, I'm bored. All my friends are dead. I have nobody left other than my wife who's going to be dead soon because she's going through what she's going through. And the worst part of it is my kids are now, I'm 90, 95. I had my kids when I was 20, 25. Now they're dying because they're getting older. I'm sad and lonely and just feel like I'm twiddling my thumbs. And it was like getting hit over the head with a baseball bat, because you think when you're younger, like, oh, I want to make it to 90. I want to make it to 100. You want to live for as long as you possibly can. And then you hear from somebody who is relatively healthy, has his mind, and still, I'm not saying he wanted to die, but still was like, my life's not that great. Like, it's not that great right now. And I'm sure that's got to mean, I guess that's a little depressing. I shouldn't have shared that story. But anyways, it was just more of something like, hey, when you speak with somebody who's 85 plus years old, you're going to get a different perspective than what you'd get from that same person 20 years earlier. And it's got to be very interesting to see what challenges somebody's going through at 85 years old, especially with the culture that we have in this country, where as people get older, they get dismissed and they get they're not utilized anymore. You're not really helpful, and they're a little bit forgotten, in my opinion. And so I guess the question I have for you, Taylor, is what are some of the big 2 or 3 or 4, whatever you want to list, things that people are talking about or sharing, obviously not generalizing, but the idea behind a large study is to be able to get an idea of what most people are looking at, thinking, and how you can map that out.
So before I even answer your question directly, I do just kind of want to validate what you've said and validate in what you've experienced with that client and perhaps with others anecdotally. I don't know that our society is fully equipped, right, to really contend with or reckon with what it means to live the 100-year life and what that means for purpose and finding and making meaning in one's life and finding meaningful opportunities to engage, whether that looks like employment, but whether that looks like something else, volunteering, interacting with younger generations, and the list goes on. So I just want to note that I hear you on that. And I think that that's a really big thing that people get out of being a part of the panel. I hear it all the time, that this has been, the opportunity to participate in this panel and in this research is amazing, is another opportunity that I have in my life to be able to continue to share a legacy that I am trying to create for myself, or to at least recognize that my contributions aren't done yet and don't have to be done yet, just because I'm, retired, or because I'm older now, or because I can't get out the way that I used to. So I think the panel itself is itself a community and creates community. And that's almost a separate podcast episode, perhaps, on research as therapeutic in a way, which is something that I really treasure and value about the panel, just personally as well. So yes, to answer your question, as far as insights and findings are concerned, since each meeting really varies, right, according to the topic, I often struggle with this question so much, because I can really get into the fine-grained detail with you on, what did the lifestyle leaders say that month about financial fraud? What did they say 2 days ago about storytelling and sort of legacy was our topic. What I think, though, we can take away from this panel, besides, I think, our musings just now on purpose and meaning at that phase in life, is also thinking just a little bit about where we're kind of dispelling stereotypes or myths or misunderstandings about this group. I think we almost always go into a workshop with a set of questions, we give them a survey before each session, and we never leave with the answer we expected to get. There's always some layer of complexity, some new idea, some sort of interesting perspective that somebody brought up, that other people, sort of rallied around and agreed with. And so I think that's that sounds so simple, but is really remarkable when we get to dig into the actual research and the data.
And I was going to say, and Lexi, this is the same with the caregiver panel. Maybe not, but I imagine there's a lot of community that comes out of this, that you have people that are feeling isolated for two various totally different reasons, but they are connected because of aging. And sometimes that might lead to friendships or communication and people feeling like, hey, listen, we're all doing this together, and it's a common thread between us. Why don't we reach out and develop that relationship and friendship a bit more? Does that happen a lot with your caregiver panel, Lexi, or is because time is such of an issue, does that get a bit more constrained than maybe it does with what Taylor was talking about with the 85 plus?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit more challenging with the caregiver panel just because of the format of being more, perhaps putting out a survey, although we have had opportunities for focus groups where caregivers have gotten the opportunity to, see where their different thoughts and ideas resonate. But this is just making me think back on our 85 plus lifestyle leader group meetings before COVID-19. We would have these wonderful members show up an hour, maybe 2 hours early to the meetings to have a coffee, sit down, chat with the researchers as well as the other lifestyle leaders. And it was really just a fun full day activity with these, incredibly vibrant older adults.
It's a double-edged sword, though, because when you get talking with some of these seniors, your day goes out the window, and that's a great thing and a bad thing. It's like, hey, you go to your boss and they're like, what'd you get done today? And you're like, nothing. I got nothing done other than talking to Joe about World War II for like 8 hours, and it was a riveting conversation, but like I got nothing else done. And I'm sure if you get 3 people showing up 2 hours early for coffee, they're looking to chat, and they're looking to chat with somebody who's younger than them that will listen to them and, pass on advice. And that's got to be good. But there's got to be like, sometimes you must have like a ringer on your phone that's like, oh, I got to go to this meeting so you can get something done throughout the day, because they'll talk to you all day long. And that's a great thing, but you've got work to do sometimes. So
I think it's a full day commitment. We're ready. We're ready to have a party for the whole day.
But that is an area, though, that probably is very sad for the people that were in these 85 plus panels that were used to coming and having a social event around this. But the positive, the pro of COVID, or you know what I mean, is that it's made people invest in learning Zoom or FaceTime or Google Meets or whatever the heck it is. And now you can really open it up to anybody in really the world if you wanted to, as long as they probably speak English or speak the language of somebody at the MIT age group, to get a consensus of what people are going through. So I think for the study, for the research side, it's probably going to be a net positive that so many more people are able to be on Zoom and do these studies. But certainly for the locals that wanted to come in, that's probably something that they're kind of mourning a little bit, and they don't get to have as much as they would like. Definitely.
We're looking forward to exploring some hybrid options and some other ways of kind of reframing these meetings in whatever this sort of COVID-19 reality continues to look like for us. So yes, I just wanted to kind of reaffirm that, the takeaway here for both of these panels is our ask for folks to check them out. For the lifestyle leaders, I always say our most difficult criteria is in fact making it to age 85 and older. And we can kind of manage everything else from there as far as getting folks set up on Zoom. And yes, you mentioned we are all English speaking. So that is right now a primary component for eligibility as well. And then as far as the caregiver panel is concerned, as Lexi had mentioned, we take a pretty broad range to what caregiving looks like. So we're always looking to meet new faces.
Absolutely. And so speaking of kind of that, if we can transition over to Boston Bridge, kind of what we get, we connected that way. And so people that know what the Boston Bridge is, it's a little bit more focused. I mean, the name says Boston Bridge. It's based in Boston, but I'm sure you're now with Zoom, you'd certainly welcome a few friendly faces that maybe are outside of the Boston area. But how about you let everybody know what Boston Bridge is?
Yes. So Boston Bridge is a sort of regionally named, at least, membership organization that is really designed for emerging and established leaders and professionals in the field of aging. And so, as you referenced, Ryan, that's how we connected, how you and I connected, and we were able to get involved together on doing this podcast episode. Boston Bridge, in particular, has been around and affiliated with the AgeLab for a number of years. The organization was founded by Barbara Friedman. And what I think is really unique and interesting about Boston Bridge is not only around its many opportunities that I think that it offers for professionals in the area. And as you had mentioned with the pandemic, we've also been on Zoom. So with increasingly professionals from other areas, frankly, and from professionals looking to start groups like this in other places, but also in its sort of, again, relationship similar to the AgeLab to population aging, right? So the concept of population aging, it means that the age demographics, the face of our labor force is changing, and organizations in particular are going to be faced with a lot of those challenges. And so I really see Boston Bridge as a professional development group that's sort of a first line defense for meeting the needs and propelling innovation for local organizations. So what does that mean? I think that means, and that's evident through all of the different opportunities and roles that Boston Bridge serves. So fundamentally, we're a professional development and education organization. We provide speakers each month, and speakers could sound very traditional in the sense that we're bringing experts from the field of aging in, but you'll be surprised to hear, perhaps similar to this podcast, we're trying to bring in people from all sorts of backgrounds, all sorts of disciplines, and all sorts of workplaces, and to bring them in to talk a little bit about what their work might have to do with aging and with thinking about the field of aging. So we meet monthly. I had mentioned we are on Zoom, and it is an open space for people to check us out and drop in. We also have sort of a whole spectrum of other kinds of opportunities, from thinking about networking, which definitely used to be a bit easier to do in person, but we're increasingly finding more creative ways to do that over Zoom to essentially bring people together. We've had people be offered and accept job positions at Boston Bridge meetings. We have a job board for organizations looking to post open job postings. And then we also have a mentorship program. Again, to that phrase I used earlier about sort of emerging and established leaders in the field of aging, for the recent grad that's looking to launch their career in gerontology, to the more seasoned professional, so to speak, who is looking to transition into a new role, and perhaps that is in aging. So we offer the mentorship program for anyone looking for an opportunity to be connected with somebody in the area who is who we might already consider an established leader in the field.
And from what I remember, only the elite of the elite can afford to be part of the Boston Bridge. Generally, people in Weston and Wellesley are the only ones that can afford it. I think it's $25 a year for be part of the Boston Bridge. So the idea is to make sure that people are able to join regardless of the income or the money. I imagine it's meant to bring people together is the main focus. And obviously I was being facetious about how much it costs, but there is for some people a barrier, and not every professional has $500 or $1,000 a year to dedicate to the various associations that are out there. And I just paid for an association today that was $550 for the year, so it can get costly quite a bit. And I think that's a great thing that you're quite affordable to. I assume part of the reason is to welcome people in and be part of the group, and to have that be attractive for individuals out there.
Absolutely. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Yeah, we want this to be a place for everybody. So we have a fairly nominal yearly membership fee. We have adjustment opportunities based on sort of where you're at in your career. We can adjust that, and we have also an ongoing impact fund, we call it, where we encourage existing members to donate, so that might support the membership of an up and coming member as well. Mm-hmm.
How has the Boston Bridge helped with some of the panels in MIT AgeLab? I mean, is that meant to be in some way, shape, or form a bit of a funnel so that people learn more about MIT AgeLab? Is it the other way around? Where does that connection outside of it being senior focused and aging happen? And where are you finding that value of having all that? Because it takes a lot of time. You're doing a lot of things, Taylor, as you are, Lexi. And so one other thing added to your plate is, it's just another thing that you have to handle. Yes.
So I would say that my interpretation of the relationship is very mutually beneficial for sure. So Boston Bridge is not a research panel of the MIT AgeLab. Boston Bridge is considered, let's call it an organizational affiliate, if you will, of the MIT AgeLab. So it's not research. It's its own freestanding nonprofit organization. But what I think one of the main sorts of connecting pieces is exactly what you mentioned, Ryan. So I think the AgeLab, for example, really sees Boston Bridge as that funnel of here is a group of professionals in the field. So if Lexi has her latest technology she wants to prototype and share, who better to get connected to in the field of aging than a whole pot over here of professionals working directly with older adults. So she can, bring her prototype in and be connected instantly to a whole group of passionate individuals in the field who might be able to connect her to who knows where from there. You could extend the same example to a student. I'm sorry. So thinking about all of our brilliant MIT students we get to interact with day to day. Sometimes we have, somebody looking for a specific type of setting in aging, so to speak. So maybe a certain type of home setting, for example, we can, immediately kind of refer them to someone that's a part of Boston Bridge, or refer them to a meeting in general, just to go check things out if they want to learn more about a specific topic or someone in particular. And for Bridge, I don't know if it's obvious, but, an affiliation with MIT and with the AgeLab is a really big deal. And a lot of times we hear about, we meet new faces and new members from the AgeLab, from the website, from collaboration opportunities like this, where I get to wear both hats. So I would say it's very mutually beneficial and symbiotic.
Well, that's a good thing. And that's just networking. The more people that are out there and the more things you do, the more people are going to search out and learn more. And so it makes sense going from Boston Bridge and talking about MIT AgeLab. Now, Lexi sent me a DM and she's like, we don't have to talk about Agnes if you don't want to, if you don't have the time. And Lexi, you're out of your mind if you don't think I'm going to come back to you and talk about Agnes. Agnes stands for, I looked it up, Age Gain Now Empathy System Program. Lexi, you are on the hot seat. We are talking about Agnes. What's going on with Agnes? Tell us about it.
Yeah, and Taylor, definitely feel free to jump in as well. But Agnes is one of our favorite AgeLab mascots, but also a really important research tool that we have. And essentially what she is a series of bungees and cords and braces and helmets and goggles that all come together to help simulate what it might feel like to be, maybe your late 70s to early 80s with some chronic conditions. Certainly no specific age. And it's certainly not what everyone will feel like, but it works both as an empathy tool as well as in contexts such as design of spaces.
So you've created the Tin Man that needs some oil that's creaking around through bungee cords so that younger people can understand what chronic issues are, at least one of them maybe being arthritis.
Yeah, and I think that something that's important too is that certainly the voices of older adults themselves and their experiences are extraordinarily important in figuring out, what can be made easier and better. But part of the purpose of Agnes as well is that for a lot of older adults or folks that might be experiencing, mobility challenges, they have found workarounds and hacks to, get through life and do everything that they want and need to do. But when a, younger person can put on the Agnes suit, they might have that sudden realization of things that could be made easier that don't have to be so challenging.
And what you're bridging the gap, see, I'm back to you, Taylor, with Boston Bridge, but sorry, that was corny. But what you're doing is bridging the gap between the almost with the book smart versus the street smart. You can read about these issues all day long, right? You can beat somebody over the head with research and all the education and information. But for some people, and probably for a lot of people, when you're able to step into somebody's shoes and walk a mile in their shoes and understand what they're going through, it's a completely different perspective. And what have you seen that's got to happen all the time. What have been some of those experiences been like when somebody who's younger in their 20s or 30s or even in their 40s who thinks that they're invincible and they're never going to get old and these things are never going to happen to them, all of a sudden go, oh, well, this is interesting. What has been that experience like?
Yeah, I'll give one of my favorite examples, and then Taylor, I'm sure you have others as well. But one of the simplest things, a lot of times what we will have folks do is put on the whole suit and then take a seat in a chair, and we ask them to stand back up. And what happens almost every single time is immediately people reach for the armrests of the chair to push themselves up because it is so challenging to do so without it. And something so small like that, where people realize the importance of having armrests on chairs in their office spaces, in their research labs, wherever they are, such a small detail that suddenly becomes so important when you have this suit on.
Yeah, that is one of those things that are probably extraordinarily overlooked. And you think, well, it's just an armchair. What's the difference? I mean, it makes sense, though. It makes sense. Taylor, do you have any examples?
Of course. So I think, like Lexi mentioned, when we put that brilliant MIT engineer or design student into the suit, it's sort of, the goal is hopefully an immediate switch of, hey, this doesn't have to be this hard. And now this person has the tools and education, hopefully, to make the fixes, right? Because I like to say that fixes that work for Agnes are good for all of us. So I often also talk about a kitchen environment. So you can certainly imagine the task of baking a cake is one that maybe involves reaching really high up into your cupboards or really low to get that cake pan or whatever it is. And there's often kind of a lot of negotiating that happens, but also and negotiating in the sense of the person in the suit negotiating with their environment. But also sort of layers of cognitive load, if you will, that get added on. So thinking a little bit about, of course, physical changes that are sort of immediate, of course, when somebody puts the suit on, which is not how the process of aging occurs. But thinking a little bit about how all of those added layers also impact, your attention, your ability to kind of remember what's happening, and again, sort of that experience of engaging with the environment.
And there's a video on your website of people demonstrating the suit, and it's rather interesting on how to navigate, a world that's designed by able-bodied people for able-bodied people. And certainly that's got to be a wake-up call for a lot of people when they put on that suit. But that's why you have, a lot of things like designs for ageless living and those people out there that can modify your home to try to make it as accessible for people as they age, or if they have chronic diseases, or if they have of other issues that make it a bit more difficult. And I imagine it's got to be an eye opener for people. I know that I went through a dementia course where you just kind of had to put on one of those kind of like Oculus VR type things. You didn't really walk around, but you could kind of move your head around. And it was wild to see what somebody with dementia, and of course they sped up the progress of dementia within 5 or 10 minutes over the course of what would happen in 5 or 10 years. But it's just something that you remember and you go, oh, all right, this is something that it kind of burns into your memory of what you experienced. Now, with COVID, how many people are able to hop in there? Is that one of the things that's been really kind of pushed back to the wayside, since it probably means that you're going to be in close contact with somebody trying to put on this suit and navigate it and learn how to go about things?
So I would say she is a bit dusty. However, Agnes is perhaps our most beloved and famous face of the lab, second only to our director, Dr. Joe Coughlin. So she actually has been hard at work during the pandemic, doing various media appearances, which come up every now and then. So I suppose this is a bit of a teaser to stay tuned to your television set for some content that'll come out in a series with her later this year. However, we are very much looking forward to being able to get back into the lab this spring with the suit and have folks, again, I think we started this whole podcast talking about what it meant to come into the Disney world that is the AgeLab and have a tour experience in person. And so we're pretty actively figuring out right now, what does it mean to be able to simulate an Agnes experience and have somebody come in to work with Agnes in person?
Yeah, well, one of the things, and this is just complete theory in my little brain of like, why does nobody plan for home care? Why does nobody plan for this aging? And part of me thinks that at least part of it is because people only go through it once, maybe twice at the most. If you think we buy houses more often than not, that's in some cases nowadays, the average house is owned for 8 years. The average car is owned for 4 or 5 years before it's replaced. You buy cars and houses more than you go through caring for a loved one, or people say, hey, you only do it once. And so because you only do it once, then, and I mean by caring for somebody, that people feel like, well, I don't need to invest the time in learning about it more. But at the same time, I think people also kind of have a cognitive dissonance there of like, well, I'm only going to be caring for somebody once. Maybe like my mom died of cancer, so it was rather quick. Maybe my dad needs a lot of care, and I go through it once. Well, that changes. Well, you're going to have to go through it too, right? Like you're forgetting about the person in the mirror. And maybe you're forgetting about the person that you married or that you live with or you love, and they may age and you might have to care for them. So I think sometimes people think it's only going to be one person that they have to care for. And then it really could be multiple people that you're caring for over the course of your life. I don't know if that's right. I don't know if it's wrong, but I would imagine that the Disneyland example of people being able to come into the MIT lab educate themselves through interaction and through being able to be kind of involved rather than sitting in a chair and being, presented to. They're actually being actively engaged with what goes on with aging has got to be a real eye opener for a lot of people that come in there. And I think that's a really important thing for people to do. And so basically what I'm getting at is I want to be invited to the AgeLab so I can check all this stuff out.
We'd love to have you, Ryan.
so you're on my podcast. You can't say no at this point in time. But all joking aside, what did that look? You said before people would just show up and like they just kind of like walk in like it was a coffee shop. And I would have thought that I'm pretty sure Disneyland sells tickets and they make you wait in line and there's like, a process to this thing. But before, I'm sure you want to get back to pre-COVID, as close to what pre-COVID was like whenever this thing gets ended. Was it basically people just walked in and there was somebody to kind of show them around? And how did that work?
Yeah, so no tickets, no lines. That's the good news. Previously, it certainly was an option for folks to drop by. And it really is as simple as that. I think our address is on the website. Unfortunately, this is, a larger policy and regulations issue with MIT is sort of we're now held to the Institute standards for COVID. And so for us, that's meant testing, attestations, and some rules around some of that. So I think we really hope to be able to come back to what that was previously and in some sort of new reality. But you know what? I'll be honest with you, in the short run, I feel like a lot of the tools and the panels that we've talked about today are the best way to connect with us. In addition to getting directly involved in our research, we also have a monthly newsletter that folks can sign up for on our website. I should plug that our website is brand new itself, and we have kind of a living blog that we're hoping is also sort of again, kind of living, breathing virtual version of the MIT AgeLab, where individuals will be able to pop on and read a little bit about what Lexi or Taylor are thinking about these days. So these are really some of the best ways that we've figured out so far, anyway, to stay connected with folks during the pandemic.
There is a ton of content on your website. And everything we talked about, I'll link to again below, but you could spend a good day just digging into what's going on over at the MIT AgeLab and the videos that you have there. And so without a doubt, it's the investment in that website, and it looks sleek, it looks good, I think is going to be a good thing for getting people to be interested in this and helping that. And so I think that's outstanding. I'm grateful you both came on. Lexi, thank you so much. Taylor, thank you so much for coming on as well. And hopefully this isn't the only time. Obviously, we are both on the same mission to try to help people, educate, provide information, and allow people to kind of know what's coming and plan for it and see it and educate yourself. And obviously what you're doing over there in Cambridge is outstanding. Are you in Cambridge or are you Boston? Cambridge, right? So over in Cambridge is outstanding. So thank you so much for coming on. And Lexi, any famous last words from you on the podcast?
Thank you so much for having us. It's been fun.
Right. And Taylor, anything else you want to plug or anything else you want to mention?
I don't think so. Just want to reiterate my thanks as well and note that all of the details will be available in the comments and in the podcast description.
Absolutely. And please check it out, everybody. See what the MIT AgeLab is doing, see what Taylor's doing and Lexi. They're doing good things. And obviously, this is our best podcast to date. Outstanding job to both Lexi and Taylor. Thank you again. And of course, thank you to everybody that listens. We really appreciate you tuning in. And I have no doubt that this is going to be a big podcast that gets a lot of downloads, because I think people are going to be really interested in this. So thank you both again, and thank you to our listeners, and we'll catch you on the next one.